Before you swipe away, imagine a simple Jefferson nickel sitting in your pocket worth more than a brand new car, more than years of savings, more than most people expect from a 5-cent coin. This is not clickbait, this is real US coin history hiding in plain sight, and millions of these nickels were spent without anyone realizing their true value. Today, you are about to discover the top 10 most valuable Jefferson nickel coins ever found. Coins created during war years, minting mistakes, rare proofs, and low production runs. Coins so rare collectors hunt them for decades. Watch closely, because number 1 is legendary. Number 10.
Imagine holding in your hand a piece of American history struck at the dawn of a decade that would soon plunge the world into war, a coin that tells the story of a nation recovering from the Great Depression, rebuilding its strength, and preparing to lead the world through its most defining moment. Today, we are diving deep into the fascinating world of the 1940 Jefferson nickel, a small 5-cent coin that carries a massive historical legacy from its design and minting process to its hidden errors, mint marks, and collector value. This is the story of how the Jefferson nickel became not just a symbol of American progress, but a witness to history itself. Stay tuned, because by the end of this video, you will see why a simple 1940 nickel could be worth more than you ever imagined, and why coin collectors all over the world still hunt for this remarkable piece of numismatic treasure. The story of the 1940 Jefferson nickel begins in a time when the United States was slowly climbing out of the shadows of the Great Depression. The nation had seen its people rise from unemployment and hardship into a renewed spirit of innovation and progress. Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal programs had re-energized the economy, and the country was finally seeing hope in its industries, agriculture, and technology as the new decade dawned. The U.S. Mint continued to reflect the country's identity and achievements through its coinage, and one of the greatest examples of that expression was the Jefferson nickel, introduced in 1938 to replace the Buffalo nickel. The Jefferson nickel was designed to honor one of America's founding fathers and the author of the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson. The design, created by Felix Schlag, won a national competition held by the U.S. Mint. Schlag's artistic approach portrayed Jefferson in a left-facing profile on the obverse or front of the coin, with his home Monticello depicted on the reverse. This was not only a tribute to Jefferson as a leader, but also a symbol of his architectural genius and his love for classical design. By 1940, the Jefferson nickel had already been in production for 2 years and had gained widespread acceptance among the American public. The U.S. Mint produced the 1940 nickel at 3 major facilities: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, each mint leaving its mark on the coin with unique variations that continue to fascinate collectors. Today, the Philadelphia Mint coins bore no mint mark, while Denver coins carried a small D and San Francisco coins featured the S mark. These small details are crucial in identifying the origin of each coin and determining its rarity. The production of the 1940 Jefferson nickel came at a time when the world was already on edge. In Europe, World War II had begun, and though the United States had not yet entered the conflict, its economy and industrial sectors were already gearing up for potential involvement. This indirectly affected the coinage process as the U.S. Mint began preparing for possible material shortages that would later lead to the famous wartime nickels from 1942 to 1945, made of silver, manganese, and copper. The 1940 nickel, however, was still composed of the pre-war metal combination 75% copper and 25% nickel, giving it a silvery appearance and a solid weight of 5 grams in terms of design details. The obverse of the 1940 Jefferson nickel presents Jefferson's bust with the inscriptions, "In God We Trust and Liberty," along with the year 1940. Schlag's initial design for the coin had originally included more artistic script and stylized lettering, but the Mint requested changes to make the coin more legible and traditional. The reverse side shows a front view of Monticello, Jefferson's home in Virginia, with the inscriptions "E Pluribus Unum, United States of America," and 5 cents. Monticello appears elegant and classical, with a clean architectural structure that has since become one of the most recognized coin designs in U.S. history. The 1940 nickel had a total mintage of more than 259 million coins across all 3 mints. Philadelphia struck the largest number, over 176 million pieces. Denver produced around 43 million, and San Francisco approximately 39 million, though These numbers might seem large. The true value of the 1940 nickel lies in its condition, rarity of strike, and specific varieties that have survived the test of time. Collectors often seek coins in mint state condition with strong strikes, full steps. On Monticello, an uncirculated luster, one of the most famous aspects of Jefferson nickels from this era is the full steps designation. When grading Jefferson nickels, experts look at the steps on Monticello. If all the steps are visible, sharp, and uninterrupted by marks or weak strikes, the coin can receive the coveted full steps designation, which significantly increases its value for the 1940 nickel, especially from the Denver and San Francisco mints. Full steps examples are much harder to find and can command prices in the hundreds or even thousands of dollars depending on condition. Let's dive into the individual mint varieties, beginning with the 1940 Philadelphia issue, since this mint did not use a mint mark identifying it. Depends on the absence of the D or S under Monticello. These coins are generally more common, but high-grade examples remain desirable. Philadelphia coins were typically well struck, but some suffer from worn dies causing weaker details, particularly on the reverse Monticello steps. Next, the 1940D from Denver. These coins are notable for having stronger strikes compared to Philadelphia issues, but finding one with full original luster and sharp details is a challenge. Many Denver nickels from 1940 show small die cracks and planche imperfections, making pristine examples especially valuable. A 1940D with full steps in mint state 67 or higher can easily surpass the $1,000 mark in today's numismatic market. Then comes the 1940S from San Francisco, a mint known for its softer strikes and lower production totals. This issue is highly sought after because of its scarcity in higher grades. The S mint mark located to the right of Monticello below the building's base can vary slightly in shape due to die changes during production, giving rise to minor varieties that collectors love to identify in terms of rarity. The 1940S full steps nickels are among the most challenging Jeffersons to acquire and stand as key pieces in any complete Jefferson nickel collection throughout 1940. The U.S. Mint also experimented with minor adjustments in die preparation, polishing, and striking pressure in an effort to perfect the Monticello design and reduce weak strikes. These technical changes make the study of 1940 nickels especially interesting. For coin historians, as slight variations in die polishing lines or details in Jefferson's hair can reveal which mint or even which die pair produced the coin error varieties from 1940, add another layer of fascination to this coin's story. Some of the most notable include off-center strikes, die clashes where parts of the design appear doubled or ghosted on the coin planche, lamination errors where parts of the metal surface peel or bubble and double die obverses. Though not common, the existence of such errors turns a simple nickel into a prized collectible, with values that can soar far beyond face value. Error collectors in particular seek out 1940 nickels, with clear doubling on the date or the words, "Liberty and in God we trust now." We turn to the historical context that surrounds this small coin. The year 1940 was a defining moment in global history. Franklin D. Roosevelt was re-elected for an unprecedented third term as President of the United States. The world was witnessing the growing destruction of World War II, and America was standing on the brink of involvement. The U.S. Mint operated continuously throughout this period, not just to produce coins for circulation, but also to maintain public confidence in the nation's financial stability. Coins like the 1940 Jefferson nickel symbolized economic resilience, a sign that the U.S. was strong, steady, and ready to lead. Jefferson's image on the coin also served as a powerful reminder of the nation's ideals: liberty, democracy, and reason. The inclusion of Monticello was more than a design choice. It was a message of education, an enlightenment reflecting Jefferson's belief in human progress and knowledge. The coin's design became both artistic and ideological, a perfect combination that ensured its longevity in U.S. coinage history. As America entered the 1940s, the Jefferson nickel would soon see dramatic changes with the onset of wartime production. By 1942, the need for nickel in military equipment forced the U.S. Mint to change the coin's composition. But the 1940 issue stands as the last fully pre-war Jefferson nickel produced under normal conditions. It is a frozen moment in time, a bridge between peace and war, between prosperity and sacrifice. For modern collectors, the 1940 Jefferson nickel remains a rewarding coin to study and collect, while many were struck and circulated heavily. Surviving examples in pristine condition are far less common. The combination of design artistry, historical relevance, and potential rarity gives the 1940 nickel lasting appeal for numismatists around the world. Whether you are looking at a brilliant uncirculated Philadelphia coin, a sharp Denver Mint issue, or a scarce San Francisco full steps example, each tells its own story of American craftsmanship and perseverance. Over the decades, grading services like PCGS and NGC have certified thousands of these coins, but only a small fraction earn the top grades of MS67 or higher, which is where the true investment potential lies in auctions, record prices. For 1940, Jefferson nickels with exceptional quality continue to surprise collectors. The best of these examples showcase mirror-like surfaces, sharp detail, and full original mint luster, making them miniature masterpieces of 20th century coinage. Have you ever held a coin so ordinary that it hides a story of war, innovation, and American pride? The 1941 Jefferson nickel isn't just a 5-cent piece. It's a silent witness to a turning point in American history. A coin that bridges peace and war, economy and craftsmanship, art and politics. What if I told you that this single nickel tells the tale of how America prepared for global conflict while holding on to its identity through design, detail, and durability? Today, we'll journey deep into the creation, production, and legacy of the 1941 Jefferson nickel, a journey that takes us from the heart of the U.S. Mint to the very soul of a nation on the brink of World War II. This is not just coin collecting. This is history in your hands. The year 1941 was one of global uncertainty and quiet preparation. The world was already engulfed in the fires of World War II, but the United States was still holding on to neutrality. However, the winds of war were growing stronger every day, and industries across the nation were shifting toward a war-ready mindset. In this atmosphere, even something as small as a nickel carried importance. The Jefferson nickel, first introduced in 1938, was still a relatively new design in American coinage, replacing the beloved buffalo nickel that had circulated for 25 years. Designed by Felix Schlag, a German-born American sculptor, the Jefferson nickel honored one of the most influential founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson, whose vision of democracy and education helped shape the United States. The obverse of the coin featured a left-facing portrait of Jefferson, calm, dignified, and deliberate, representing the ideals of leadership, reason, and progress. The reverse showed his Virginia home, Monticello, a neoclassical structure that Jefferson himself designed, standing as a symbol of architecture, intellect, and independence. By 1941, the coin had already gone through 3 full years of production, with minor adjustments made to improve the strike and the clarity of Monticello's steps. The Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mints all contributed to the production of the 1941 Jefferson nickel. Each mint had unique challenges during this year. Philadelphia, being the main hub, produced the majority of the coins, boasting a strong mintage of over 203 million pieces. Denver followed with over 53 million, and San Francisco struck around 43 million nickels. Together, they made the 1941 issue one of the most common pre-war nickels in circulation. But their value today depends heavily on condition, die quality, and mint mark clarity. The 1941 Jefferson nickel represents the last full year before America entered the Second World War. In just 1 year, the U.S. Mint would change the nickel's composition due to wartime metal shortages, introducing the famous silver war nickels that began in late 1942. But in 1941, the traditional alloy of 75% copper and 25% nickel remained intact, giving these coins a unique status as the final pre-war alloy issues. They are, in many ways, the closing chapter of America's peacetime coinage era before materials and priorities shifted toward national defense. Collectors and historians look at the 1941 nickel not just as currency but as a time capsule. The luster, the strike, the die varieties, and even the minor minting imperfections tell us about the machinery, the technology, and the workforce of that time. The Philadelphia Mint's coins are generally known for strong strikes and good detail, though some early runs show weak steps on Monticello. The Denver Mint often produced coins with sharp detail, but more frequent die deterioration, leading to rougher surfaces in some specimens. The San Francisco Mint's coins, though lower in quantity, are known for slightly softer strikes but cleaner, more polished dies, giving them a subtle charm that collectors recognize immediately. Among these, the full-step varieties, coins where the steps of Monticello are fully visible and distinct, are especially prized. Achieving a full-step strike in 1941 required precise die alignment and pressure, something not consistently maintained during high-volume production. Because of that, full-step examples, particularly from San Francisco, are quite rare and command significant premiums in the collector's market. The artistry of Felix Schlag deserves its own attention. When he first submitted his design in 1938, it wasn't accepted immediately. The U.S. Mint held a design competition with over 390 artists participating, and though Schlag's design was selected, he was asked to modify it before production. His original reverse had a more dynamic view of Monticello with perspective depth, but the Mint wanted a straight-on architectural view that aligned with traditional coinage symmetry. By 1941, Schlag's work had matured in the public eye, becoming instantly recognizable across the nation. Millions of Americans use Jefferson's image daily, associating it with both the stability of the past and the uncertainty of the future. What makes the 1941 Jefferson nickel fascinating is how it connects everyday life to history. Imagine an American in 1941 walking to a corner store, buying a newspaper for a nickel, reading headlines about Europe's turmoil while paying with this coin, an object that quietly symbolized America's identity. That same coin could have passed through the hands of a factory worker producing military equipment or a young soldier buying a soda before enlisting. Each nickel carried not just value, but a story of resilience and anticipation. From a technical standpoint, the 1941 Jefferson nickel was struck with precision using high-quality planchets, but as wartime demand for metal increased, even these production standards faced pressure. The Mint began experimenting quietly with alternative alloys to prepare for possible shortages. This research laid the groundwork for the composition change that would occur in 1942, when silver and manganese replaced nickel in the alloy. Thus, the 1941 nickel serves as the last chapter of consistency before necessity forced innovation. Today, grading plays a major role in determining the 1941 Jefferson nickel's worth. Coins in circulated condition hold modest value, but uncirculated examples with strong luster and full steps are highly collectible. A 1941 Philadelphia or Denver nickel in MS-67 full steps can bring hundreds of dollars, while a San Francisco full-step specimen can cross into the thousands. Proof coins struck in Philadelphia are another story altogether. The 1941 proof Jefferson nickel had a mintage of about 18,700 pieces, making it one of the last proof issues before the Mint suspended proof coinage for wartime efficiency. These proofs have deeply mirrored surfaces and crisp detail, making them miniature masterpieces of pre-war minting art. From 1941 onward, the Jefferson nickel would evolve in both material and meaning. Wartime nickels, post-war strikes, and even modern issues all trace their lineage back to these early years. The 1941 nickel remains a cornerstone for Jefferson collectors, not only for its historical context, but also for its transitional position between peace and war. Its design stood the test of time, continuing all the way until 2003, before being replaced by newer commemorative versions of Jefferson's portrait and Monticello's view. As we study this coin, we uncover layers of America's story: industrial strength, artistic pride, economic resilience, and the human spirit in the face of change. Every scratch, every shine, and every preserved mint mark from 1941 speaks to a moment when America stood on the threshold of transformation. Collectors don't just see metal, they see memory, and that is what makes the 1941 Jefferson nickel one of the most captivating coins in American history. Have you ever held a coin so ordinary in appearance, yet so deeply tied to the history of a nation rebuilding itself after a world war? Have you ever wondered how a small 5-cent piece could reflect the changing face of America? Its struggles, its rebirth, and its quiet power. Welcome to the world of the 1947 Jefferson nickel, a coin that might just be resting in your pocket right now, but carries a legacy that stretches from the end of World War II into the dawn of the modern American era. Today, we are diving deep into the story of this unassuming yet fascinating coin, exploring its creation, its purpose, its hidden variations, its connection to post-war America, and why collectors today still seek it out with passion and precision. The year was 1947. The United States was emerging from the devastation of the Second World War. Factories, once dedicated to producing tanks and ammunition, were now switching back to consumer goods. Soldiers were returning home, rebuilding their lives. And the U.S. Mint was returning to its pre-war practices. The Jefferson nickel, which had been introduced in 1938 to replace the Buffalo nickel, had become a symbol of consistency, stability, and American identity. The coin featured the noble portrait of Thomas Jefferson on the obverse designed by Felix Schlag, a German-American sculptor whose design had been chosen through a national competition nearly a decade earlier. Jefferson's image represented not just the third president of the United States, but also the ideals of democracy, science, architecture, and independence that were central to the American character. By 1947, the wartime composition of nickels, which had included silver due to metal shortages, had ended between 1942 and 1945. Nickels contained 35% silver, making them part of what collectors now call the wartime alloy series. But in 1946, the mint returned to the traditional composition of 75% copper and 25% nickel, a mix that produced a brighter, harder, wearing coin as America transitioned to peace. The 1947 Jefferson nickel was one of the first full years of this restored metallic balance, making it a symbol of economic normalization and renewed prosperity. The coin was minted in 3 primary locations: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, each producing its own variety, marked respectively by no mint mark for Philadelphia, a small D for Denver, and an S for San Francisco. The Philadelphia Mint produced the largest number of nickels in 1947 with over 100 million coins struck, while the Denver and San Francisco mints produced significantly fewer, giving their issues a higher interest among collectors. The 1947 S in particular is known for its lower mintage and often better strike quality, making it a gem among mid-century nickels. The design of the Jefferson nickel remained largely unchanged in 1947, yet its details held subtle evolutions. Felix Schlag's original design had been modified slightly over the years to improve legibility, and striking the obverse displayed Jefferson's left-facing bust with the inscription, "In God We Trust" on the left, and Liberty with the date on the right separated by a small star. The reverse featured Monticello Jefferson's home in Charlottesville, Virginia, with the inscriptions, "E Pluribus Unum United States of America" and 5 cents. Schlag's Monticello design was initially criticized for its flat perspective and lack of depth, but by 1947, the Mint had refined the dies to give the building a more realistic architectural look that better reflected Jefferson's neoclassical masterpiece. For collectors, the 1947 Jefferson nickel offers a range of fascinating varieties and conditions. To explore, one of the most notable features in the series is the full step designation on the Monticello building on the reverse. When struck sharply, a nickel will show 5 or 6 distinct steps at the base of the building. Full step examples are rare, especially from earlier dies, and are highly prized by collectors because they indicate an excellent strike and pristine preservation. Finding a 1947 Jefferson nickel with full steps, particularly from the Denver or San Francisco mints, can make the difference between a coin worth mere cents and one worth hundreds of dollars in high mint state grades. Grading the 1947 nickel requires a close eye on details. The obverse should show a sharp outline of Jefferson's hair and cheek, while the reverse should display clear architectural lines across Monticello. The field should be clean with minimal contact marks. Since nickels were used heavily in circulation, many examples show wear, particularly on Jefferson's cheekbone and Monticello's dome high grade. Examples are thus rare and desirable. Mint state coins graded MS-65 or higher can bring impressive prices, especially with full steps designation. But beyond numismatics, the 1947 Jefferson nickel tells a story of an America redefining itself after the global turmoil of the 1940s. The war was over, but the Cold War had begun. The atomic age was dawning, and American confidence was surging. The mint's return to its traditional nickel composition symbolized a return to normalcy, yet a readiness for innovation. The very metal in the coin spoke of durability and endurance, much like the spirit of the people who carried it in their pockets to buy bread, newspapers, or a cup of coffee in post-war America. The Jefferson nickel series itself stands as one of the longest-running coin designs in U.S. history, stretching from 1938 into the 21st century, and the 1947 issue rests squarely in the heart of that legacy, a bridge between wartime scarcity and post-war abundance, between old-world ideals and modern American identity. It is a coin of transition and stability, a reflection of a nation stepping confidently into its future. Over the decades, collectors have come to appreciate the 1947 Jefferson nickel not merely for its scarcity or variations, but for what it represents. It marks the return of peacetime, minting the continuation of Felix Schlag's elegant design and the enduring appeal of Jefferson's vision. The coin is a time capsule of mid-century America, the optimism of the post-war years, the economic boom of the late 1940s, and the faith in progress that defined an entire generation. When examining the 1947 nickel, you are not just looking at metal and design, you are holding a story in your hand, a story of resilience, craftsmanship, and national rebirth. Whether it comes from the gleaming presses of Philadelphia, the efficient output of Denver, or the precise strikes of San Francisco. Each 1947. Jefferson nickel carries a piece of that narrative through every ridge edge and detail. So the next time you come across a Jefferson nickel dated 1947, take a moment to see beyond its surface. Look at Jefferson's calm expression, the proud dome of Monticello, and the timeless words that surround it. They speak of a nation that rebuilt, redefined, and rose again from the shadows of war into an era of prosperity. The 1947 Jefferson nickel is not just a coin. It is a monument in miniature, a testament to America's enduring spirit, and a shining link between the past and the present. If you are a collector history lover, or simply someone curious about how everyday objects carry the weight of extraordinary stories, then this coin's tale will draw you in and remind you that even the smallest things can have the biggest histories. Welcome to the story of the 1947 Jefferson nickel, where every strike tells a chapter and every glimmer of metal whispers the promise of a nation reborn. Imagine holding in your hand a small piece of American history, a coin that carries the story of war, peace, recovery, and a nation rebuilding itself after global conflict. This is not just any coin. This is the 1946 Jefferson nickel, a piece of metal that marks the end of an era and the beginning of a new chapter in the story of the United States Mint and the American people. The year was 1946, and the world was just stepping out of the shadows of World War II. The air was filled with the hope of peace. But the scars of the war were still fresh in the memories of millions for the United States Mint. This year meant something very important. It marked the return to the traditional composition of the Jefferson nickel after years of wartime. Experimentation from 1942 to 1945, the Mint had used a special alloy of silver manganese and copper to save nickel metal for the war effort. These war nickels carried a distinct look and even a large mint mark above Monticello to signify their unique composition. But in 1946, things changed. America was moving from war to peace, and with it, the Jefferson nickel was reborn in its original form. The 1946 Jefferson nickel was struck in 3 locations: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, but what makes this year remarkable is the symbolic return to the original 75% copper and 25% nickel composition. The same blend that had been used since 1938 when the Jefferson nickel series was first introduced. This shift back to the pre-war alloy was more than a technical adjustment. It was a message of stability, of recovery, and of the American spirit of normalcy. After the long years of conflict designed by Felix Schlag, the Jefferson nickel had already become one of the most recognizable coins in American pockets. The obverse features a proud left-facing portrait of Thomas Jefferson, the 3rd President of the United States and one of the nation's founding fathers. Schlag's design was chosen in 1938 through a national competition held by the Mint, and his work captured Jefferson's thoughtful and intellectual demeanor. On the reverse side stands Monticello Jefferson's Grand Virginia estate, a neoclassical masterpiece that mirrors the architecture of American ideals, democracy, knowledge, and balance. When production resumed in 1946, the Mint faced the challenge of refining its machinery. After years of using different alloys, the pre-war copper-nickel blend was harder and more durable than the wartime silver alloy. So new adjustments had to be made to ensure that every strike captured the fine details of Schlag's design. Many 1946 nickels from the early production runs show signs of weak strikes, particularly on Jefferson's hair details and the steps of Monticello. This was due to worn dies and technical readjustments. But as the year progressed, quality improved and later strikes became sharper and more detailed. In terms of mintages, the 1946 nickel saw massive production as the economy Surged with post-war optimism, the Philadelphia Mint alone produced over 161 million coins. The Denver Mint added about 45 million, and the San Francisco Mint contributed roughly 13 million. This total of over 219 million nickels ensured that the 1946 issue circulated widely across the country. Yet among these millions of coins, collectors today still search for those special pieces with full steps on Monticello. A mark of a well-struck example that reveals all 6 steps at the base of Jefferson's. Home full-step nickels from 1946 are rare, especially from the San Francisco Mint. And these coins command a premium in the numismatic market. Now let's step back and look at the historical context. The United States in 1946 was a country in transformation. Soldiers were returning home from battle, industries were shifting from weapons to consumer goods, and the American dream was being rewritten. Factories that once built tanks were now building cars and homes. The coinage of 1946 reflected this new era. Every Jefferson nickel struck that year carried with it the weight of victory and the promise of peace. These coins moved through the hands of citizens buying their first post-war cup of coffee, paying bus fares in booming cities, and being saved by collectors who saw in them a symbol of a new beginning. The mint itself was undergoing modernization in 1946. It was still using traditional press machines, but was preparing for the technological improvements that would define the 1950s. The need for efficiency, precision, and mass production had grown dramatically during the war, and now those innovations were being redirected to serve a thriving consumer economy. The Jefferson nickel stood at the crossroads of this evolution, a small, durable coin made not for war, but for prosperity. One of the most intriguing aspects of the 1946 nickel is how it bridged 2 ages. The war nickels of 1942 through 1945 with their silver content are a distinct subset in the series, and the 1946 issue marked a return to normalcy. Collectors often see the 1946 coin as the first of the post-war nickels, a transitional symbol representing both the past and the future in the numismatic community. It is appreciated not only for its metallic composition, but also for its historical meaning. In terms of design modifications, nothing major changed in 1946. Schlag's design remained consistent, but minor die variations have been recorded by experts in the field. These include differences in the size of the letters in the motto and variations in the strike of Monticello's dome. Advanced collectors often spend years searching for these die varieties, and grading services like PCGS and NGC recognize full-step examples as elite pieces worth hundreds, or even thousands of dollars depending on mint and condition. Beyond its numismatic value, the 1946 Jefferson nickel is also a cultural artifact. It represents the ideals of Jefferson himself, a man who believed in education, science, architecture, and democracy. His image on the coin serves as a daily reminder of those values during a time when America was redefining its place in the world. Coins are not just money. They are miniature history books carrying symbols, ideals, and the heartbeat of a nation. As the years passed, millions of 1946 nickels continued to circulate through the 1950s and 1960s, but as the designs aged and the dies wore down, the mint began to consider design updates. By the 1960s and 1970s, Jefferson's portrait would be refined, but the 1946 issue remains pure to Schlag's original artistic vision. Today, collectors seek high-grade examples preserved in mint-state condition coins that never entered circulation and still gleam with the original luster of post-war America. The 1946 Jefferson nickel tells us much about resilience and recovery. It reminds us that even after years of global turmoil, nations can rebuild and find balance again, and that sometimes the smallest objects like a 5-cent piece can tell the greatest stories, from the war effort's silver alloys to the post-war copper-nickel restoration, from the quiet craftsmanship of Felix Schlag to the massive presses of the United States Mint. The 1946 Jefferson nickel embodies the story of America's comeback. Have you ever held a coin so ordinary in appearance yet hiding a legacy of post-war American ambition, economic transition, and numismatic intrigue? The 1952 Jefferson nickel is not just another 5-cent piece. It's a silent witness to a nation, reshaping itself after World War II, a coin that bridges the story between wartime scarcity and post-war prosperity. And behind its simple Monticello design lies a tale of artistry, politics, minting struggles and collectors' dreams that few have. Ever Heard Today, we're diving deep into the world of the 1952 Jefferson nickel, a story filled with mint marks, metal shortages, dye varieties, and the quest for perfection that defined an era. So grab your magnifying glass, settle in, and prepare for a journey through time where every detail, every mint flaw, and every preserved nickel tells the story of America in transition. Welcome to a numismatic adventure that transforms the common into the extraordinary. And by the end of this video, you'll never look at your spare change the same way again. In the year 1952, America stood tall as a nation, entering a decade of innovation, prosperity, and cultural change. Yet beneath the surface of that optimism, the country was facing the aftereffects of the Second World War and the rise of the Cold War tensions that influenced everything from industry to currency. The Jefferson nickel struck in that very year was a small metallic reflection of that transitional era. It was more than just a coin. It was a statement of continuity representing American ideals through design, economic policy, and national identity. The Jefferson nickel, introduced in 1938 to replace the Buffalo nickel, carried the image of Thomas Jefferson, one of the founding fathers and the principal author of the Declaration of Independence. This coin's creation was part of a larger artistic wave to modernize United States coinage with cleaner lines and patriotic symbolism. The artist Felix Schlegel, a German-born sculptor, had designed the portrait of Jefferson on the obverse and his famous home Monticello on the reverse, both of which became icons of mid-20th century American coin design by 1952. The Jefferson nickel had already established itself as a staple of American commerce. The nickel was not only a tool of everyday exchange, but also a subtle reflection of economic stability and industrial strength. During this time, the United States Mint operated out of three major facilities: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, each contributing its own production of the Jefferson nickel for the year 1952. The Philadelphia Mint struck around 64 million coins, the Denver Mint produced approximately 30 million, and the San Francisco Mint added roughly 20 million to circulation. Each of these coins, though identical in design, had minute differences and mint marks that now fascinate collectors. The Philadelphia Mint had no mint mark, while Denver's coins carried the D and San Francisco's the S. These small letters beneath the right side of Monticello on the reverse were symbols of identity that separated common nickels from regional rarities. The design itself remained faithful to Felix Schlegel's original concept, though subtle. Modifications had occurred over the years to improve dye life and clarity. Jefferson's bust was modeled in a neoclassical style, emphasizing his intellectual dignity. His gaze turned to the left with calm composure, while the word liberty and the date 1952 stretched elegantly across the right field above his profile on the reverse. Monticello was depicted with symmetry and precision, its steps, doors, and dome reflecting the ideals of structure and order that Jefferson himself cherished. However, not all 1952 nickels captured this detail perfectly due to dye wear and mechanical limitations. Some coins appeared weakly struck, especially around the steps of Monticello, leading to what collectors now refer to as the full step designation AI, feature highly prized in grading today. To understand the importance of the 1952 Jefferson nickel, we must look at the broader economic context. The United States in 1952 was in the midst of the Korean War, which began in 1950. This conflict affected the allocation of metals as the government prioritized strategic materials for defense purposes, while nickel was not rationed as severely as during World War II. The mint still faced challenges balancing cost and supply. This scarcity contributed to a focus on production efficiency and dye maintenance. The mint had to ensure each planchet was properly annealed and struck with consistent pressure to achieve a satisfactory result. The durability of the nickel alloy, 75% copper and 25% nickel, was ideal for circulation, but hard on dyes, leading to frequent replacements and minor variations in strike quality. These subtleties are what make the 1952 Jefferson nickel so intriguing to collectors today. The mints each had their own production challenges. Philadelphia, as the primary mint, handled the bulk of the coinage and maintained the highest output, but the Denver and San Francisco mints produced coins with their own distinct characteristics. Denver coins are known for relatively strong strikes, though with occasional dye erosion that softened the finer details. The San Francisco Mint in 1952 was nearing the end of its coinage era for circulation coins soon to cease production. After 1955. Thus, the 1952 IS Jefferson nickel carries historical importance as part of that closing chapter. The S-Mint coins often exhibit weaker strikes, but carry charm due to their limited mintage and regional distinctiveness. Collectors have long studied the varieties. And errors of this coin year, one of the most fascinating aspects lies in die breaks, repunched mint marks, and over-polished dies, which produced anomalies such as missing steps or doubled details. These are the accidental artworks of the minting process, each revealing something unique about the life of a die and the pressures of production in a high-demand post-war economy. Among the more noted varieties for 1952 are the repunched mint marks on both Denver and San Francisco issues. The repunched mint mark occurs when the letter punch was applied twice to the die slightly off alignment, creating a shadow effect. These varieties are now cataloged and valued highly, especially in higher grades. In circulation, the 1952 Jefferson nickel saw widespread use as America's economy expanded. Families were buying new homes, cars, and appliances, and nickels passed through millions of hands. In daily commerce, vending machines, jukeboxes, and telephone booths all consumed nickels by the millions. The coin became part of the soundtrack of the 1950s, a small metallic symbol of convenience and progress. Yet while millions were spent and saved, few recognized the artistry and precision that went into creating each piece for numismatists. Every small detail mattered, from the luster of the metal to the strike sharpness and die alignment. As the decades passed and the Jefferson nickel design endured through countless changes in politics and culture, the 1952 issue began to stand out for its historical positioning, sitting firmly between the wartime nickels of 1942-1945 and the modernized issues of the late 1950s. It represents the steady normalization of America's coinage and economy. Collectors began seeking examples in high grade with full steps and brilliant luster. As the numismatic market evolved, grading services like PCGS and NGC began certifying these coins, assigning premiums to those in pristine mint state condition with perfect step details. A full step 1952S or 1952D Jefferson nickel can fetch significant value today due to their rarity and such preservation. The Jefferson nickel itself continued its journey through American pockets until design changes began to modernize the portrait in 2004 and 2005. Yet the 1952 issue remains frozen in time, a mid-century snapshot of American artistry and industrial resilience, when coins were still struck from solid metal rather than plated composites. Its simple beauty and historical depth attract not only collectors but historians who see in it the story of America rebuilding and redefining itself after the turmoil of global conflict. If you examine a 1952 nickel under magnification, you can see the craftsmanship that the mint engravers applied. Every contour of Jefferson's face, every architectural line of Monticello carved with precision. Despite the limitations of the mid-century equipment, it's a small yet profound testament to the American mint's dedication to quality even in an age of mass production. From metal sourcing to die engraving, each stage carried human skill and attention to detail. These were not just coins, they were miniature works of national art. In the world of coin collecting, the 1952 Jefferson nickel occupies a respected position, bridging eras, connecting collectors to a time when the mint's mechanical rhythm echoed the nation's progress and perseverance. Its value lies not merely in its monetary worth, but in the stories it carries, stories of mint workers, artisans, and citizens who used it daily to buy milk, newspapers, and gasoline. It's a coin that silently watched history unfold from the Korean War to the dawn of rock and roll. Have you ever held a coin in your hand and wondered what secrets it carries? The whispers of history, the silent journey through time from the hands of ordinary Americans to the vaults of collectors across the world? Today we dive deep into one of the most fascinating chapters of American coinage, the 1956 Jefferson nickel. A coin that might look simple to the untrained eye, but hides within it a story of artistry, ambition, and the golden era of post-war America. This is not just a nickel. This is a symbol of a nation's pride, a reflection of its economy, its culture, and its craftsmanship. Stay with me as we journey back to 1956, a year when America was booming, when innovation was reshaping every aspect of life, and when the united, States Mint was producing one of the most remarkable coins of the Jefferson series. Welcome to the world of the 1956 Jefferson nickel. The 1956 Jefferson nickel stands as a remarkable testament to the United States' post-war prosperity and stability. Minted during a period of optimism, industrial expansion, and cultural transformation, the coin represents more than mere currency. It is a symbol of continuity in design and tradition stretching back to 1938, when the Jefferson nickel was first introduced. Replacing the long-running Buffalo nickel designed by Felix Schlag, the Jefferson nickel became an instant classic, embodying the spirit of the third president of the United States, Thomas Jefferson, and showcasing his home Monticello on the reverse. By 1956, this design had already cemented itself as one of America's most recognizable coins, and yet the story behind this specific year is one of quiet significance and technical achievement. In 1956, America was thriving. The Eisenhower administration was leading a country filled with confidence. The interstate highway system was just beginning to take shape. Television was transforming the way people saw the world, and the U.S. Mint continued its work to meet the demands of a growing population. Coinage production was steady but refined, and the 1956 Jefferson nickel was no exception. It was struck only at the Philadelphia and Denver mints, and both mints maintained exceptional quality control for the era, though proof coins were minted in Philadelphia to satisfy the growing interest of collectors. At the Philadelphia Mint, more than 35 million nickels were struck without a mint mark. Since Philadelphia coins traditionally carried none, the Denver Mint produced roughly 67 million. Coins marked by a small D on the reverse to the right of Monticello. But despite the large mintage, not all 1956 nickels are created. Equal slight variations in strike quality, luster, and die wear have created a range of conditions that influence their desirability among collectors, while circulated examples remain common. Finding well-struck coins with sharp details, especially on Jefferson's hair and Monticello's steps, can be a challenge, and it is these high-quality strikes that truly excite numismatists. Proof coins of 1956 deserve special attention. These proofs were struck at the Philadelphia Mint with meticulous care, using polished dies and specially prepared planchets. Approximately 69,000 proof sets were produced that year, making them highly collectible today. Each proof coin was hand-inspected and packed into a 5-coin set featuring the Lincoln cent, Jefferson nickel, Roosevelt dime, Washington quarter, and Franklin half-dollar. The 1956 proof Jefferson nickel is known for its deep mirror surfaces and remarkable detail, with cameo contrasts highly prized by collectors in today's market. The design of the Jefferson nickel had remained unchanged since 1938, but by the mid-1950s, subtle improvements in die, technology, and minting techniques had begun to enhance the overall appearance of the coin. Felix Schlag's original vision of Jefferson facing left had endured for nearly 2 decades. His depiction of Monticello on the reverse continued to stand. As a powerful architectural emblem of early American ideals, the simplicity of the design belied the complexity of its creation and the technical mastery required to strike a coin with both aesthetic beauty and functional durability. The year 1956 was also significant in terms of economic history. The nickel's purchasing power was greater than it is today. With 5 cents, you could buy a loaf of bread or a cold soda. Yet inflation and industrial progress were already reshaping the value of money. The nickel's composition of 75% copper and 25% nickel remained unchanged since its inception in 1866, symbolizing durability and continuity in a rapidly modernizing world. Each coin struck that year circulated through the hands of Americans who were part of a changing society, from factory workers to school children to soldiers returning home and building new lives. The 1956 Jefferson nickel thus became a witness to the optimism and vitality of mid-century America. When examining the details of the 1956 issue, collectors pay particular attention to the sharpness of Monticello's steps. On the reverse, fully struck steps, known as full steps, are an indicator of superior die condition and precise striking. Such examples are relatively scarce and command significant premiums in the collector market. Coins displaying 5 or 6 complete steps are particularly valued by specialists and grading companies like PCGS and NGC. Recognize these details with special designations. The search for the elusive full steps. 1956, Jefferson nickel continues to be a passion for advanced collectors. Worldwide errors and varieties from 1956 add even more intrigue, though not as numerous as in some other years. A few noteworthy varieties exist, including repunched mint marks and minor die clashes. These anomalies provide unique insight into the minting process of the time and add a sense of individuality to each surviving coin. Even a small misalignment or doubled feature can turn a common nickel into a fascinating study of minting history and a highly desirable collectible. By the late 1950s, the United States Mint was already planning for modernization. The Jefferson nickel would continue unchanged until 1966, when modifications to the design and relief were introduced, but the 1956 issue remains emblematic of the post-war golden age. It was a coin that circulated widely yet quietly, a part of everyday life that bridged the gap between the wartime economy and the technological boom of the 1960s. Collectors today often view it as a piece of Americana, a symbol of stability and craftsmanship from an era that defined a generation. The market value of 1956. Jefferson nickels varies depending on condition, rarity, and eye appeal. Circulated examples are generally worth only face value or slightly more, but uncirculated specimens, especially those with strong luster and full steps, can command impressive prices. Proof versions with deep cameo contrast are highly sought after and can reach into the hundreds of dollars for pristine certified examples. What makes the 1956 nickel truly special, however, is not its monetary worth but its story. It represents a chapter of American history preserved in metal, a time capsule of mid-century life minted in copper and nickel. To truly appreciate the 1956 Jefferson nickel, one must see beyond its 5-cent denomination and recognize it as a reflection of national identity, from the vision of Felix Schlag's design to the precision of the mint's machinery. Each coin is a work of art, crafted for the people and carried through decades of change. Perhaps a coin in your pocket today once passed through the hands of someone living in 1956, a factory worker, a child saving for their first toy, or a veteran rebuilding their life. Every mark and scratch tells a story. Every shine under the light reminds us that coins are not just currency, but carriers of history. So as we explore the 1956 Jefferson nickel, we see more than metal. We see America itself, resilient, proud, innovative, and timeless. A 5-cent piece that has become a bridge across generations, a relic of craftsmanship that continues to captivate collectors, historians, and dreamers alike from its creation. In the bustling halls of the Philadelphia and Denver mints to its survival in collections around the world, the 1956 Jefferson nickel remains one of the quiet legends of United States coinage, a symbol of a nation that was and still is in constant pursuit of perfection. Have you ever held a coin that carried more than just its face value, a coin that whispered stories from the heart of American history? Today, we uncover the untold legacy of the 1958 Jefferson nickel, a coin that looks ordinary to the untrained eye but hides a powerful story of transition, craftsmanship, and American pride. From the minting halls of Philadelphia and Denver to the hands of millions of Americans, this coin marks the final calm before one of the biggest design and production changes in U.S. coinage history. Stay tuned as we dive deep into the craftsmanship, the minting secrets, the errors, and the market value shifts that make the 1958 Jefferson nickel one of the most underrated yet significant coins in U.S. history. The story of the 1958 Jefferson nickel begins in the post-war era of American optimism, when the United States was growing stronger, economically, culturally, and politically. The Jefferson nickel itself had been in circulation since 1938, replacing the Buffalo nickel and featuring one of the nation's founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson, on the obverse, and his Monticello estate on the reverse, designed by Felix Schlag. This coin became not only a piece of currency, but also a reflection of American heritage and artistry. By 1958, the Jefferson nickel had been in production for 2 decades, and the U.S. Mint had mastered the art of striking this coin with consistency, precision, and beauty. The Philadelphia Mint and the Denver Mint were the only 2 facilities to produce the 1958 Jefferson nickel. There were no nickels minted in San Francisco. During this year, this meant that collectors and historians would later focus their attention on mint marks and subtle details that distinguish one coin from another. The Philadelphia issue had no mint mark, while the Denver issue bore a small D located to the right of Monticello on the reverse side. Both versions were struck from the standard composition of 75% copper and 25% nickel, giving it the familiar silvery tone that endures through decades. 1958 was a year of technological transition within the U.S. Mint. Advances in die production and metal preparation began improving strike quality, although the coins were still made using traditional mechanical presses. Compared to later years, these presses required manual oversight by skilled mint workers who ensured the dies remained aligned and the pressure consistent. The Jefferson nickel's design, especially the steps of Monticello, was notoriously difficult to strike fully. Many coins from 1958 failed to show complete step detail, which would later become one of the most sought-after features for collectors, known as full steps or FS designations. These refer to the sharply defined horizontal lines at the base of Monticello when all 5 or 6 steps are visible without breaks. The coin is considered a numismatic gem. In 1958, the Philadelphia Mint produced around 168 million nickels, while the Denver Mint struck nearly 120 million in total. The mintage surpassed 280 million coins, making it one of the higher production years for the Jefferson series. Despite that, the survival of high-quality coins, especially those with sharp details and minimal contact marks, is relatively low due to heavy circulation. Most of the nickels minted that year were used daily in commerce, passing through countless hands buying coffee, newspapers, gasoline, and groceries. It was the era before widespread credit cards when coins truly powered the American economy. As we explore the design, the obverse of the 1958 Jefferson nickel presents a left-facing portrait of Thomas Jefferson rendered with classic neoclassical styling. His expression is calm and thoughtful. A tribute to his intellect and leadership. Around the edge of the coin reads the words, "In God we trust," on the left, and "Liberty," followed by the date. 1958 on the right, connected by a small 5-pointed star. The reverse side features Monticello Jefferson's famous estate in Charlottesville, Virginia. The building is framed by the word Monticello at the top, 5 cents below, and United States of America along the lower rim. A pluribus unum is centered above the dome, signifying the unity of the states. By 1958, the dies used for minting were showing slight wear from years of repeated use. Minor changes and refinements occurred in the engraving to maintain clarity, yet the mint refrained from any major redesign until the 1960s. This makes 1958 an important transitional year. It represents the last pure stage of the early Jefferson nickel design before subtle modernizations began appearing. Collectors today view the 1958 Jefferson nickel as an affordable yet historically rich coin. Its value in circulated grades is modest, but in mint state conditions, particularly in MS-65 to MS-67, with full steps, the prices can reach hundreds of dollars, and in rare top condition even over $1,000, especially from the Denver Mint, which is known for slightly weaker strikes. The most prized 1958 D nickels are those showing sharp steps and clean luster preserved from uncirculated rolls or original mint sets. There are also known varieties and errors that fascinate coin enthusiasts. Some examples include double die obverse and reverse issues, where letters or features appear slightly doubled due to misalignment in die preparation. Other varieties include repunched mint marks or die cracks along Monticello's columns, though not as dramatic as wartime silver nickel errors. These 1958 mistakes still attract attention and can significantly boost a coin's desirability and market value. The year 1958 also connects deeply with the broader American story. Dwight D. Eisenhower was president. The nation stood at the dawn of the space age, and the spirit of progress was everywhere. The Jefferson nickel was part of the fabric of everyday life, yet it was also a silent witness to social change. The civil rights movement was gaining strength, and the U.S. economy was thriving. The coin symbolized stability in an era of rapid transformation. Its metallic shine reflected both tradition and hope. When studying the Jefferson nickel series, numismatists often divide its history into major phases. The early silver wartime nickels from 1942 to 1945, the pre-modern years from 1938 to 1964, and the modern-clad issues beginning in 1965, the 1958 nickel falls squarely in the pre-modern era, making it one of the last pure copper-nickel issues before the mint overhauled many of its processes. It was a period when design integrity and die craftsmanship still depended heavily on human expertise. Every coin struck was a small piece of artistry born from the efforts of engravers, die sinkers, and press operators who dedicated their careers to perfection. Over time, collectors have come to appreciate the 1958 Jefferson nickel not just for its face value or metal content, but for what it represents: the end of an age of traditional minting and the perseverance of a classic American design. The Jefferson portrait continued to appear on the nickel for decades, but by the 1960s and 1970s, design fatigue and modernization efforts began altering its details. The 1958 issue remains one of the last untouched examples of Felix Schlag's original artistic vision, before refinements began reshaping the portrait and Monticello's relief. As the years passed, millions of these coins were lost to wear, melting, or circulation attrition, yet thousands survived in collectors' hands. Today they are preserved in albums and coin slabs carefully graded by professionals from the Professional Coin Grading Service and the Numismatic Guarantee Company. Their surfaces tell stories of history and preservation, shining reminders of mid-century America. To truly understand the 1958 Jefferson nickel is to see beyond metal and mint marks. It is to understand the evolution of American craftsmanship and the quiet dignity of a design that has endured for nearly a century. This coin remains a symbol of progress, continuity, and the enduring value of American coinage. Whether you are a casual collector, a numismatist, or simply someone fascinated by history, the 1958 Jefferson nickel holds a story worth telling, a story of legacy, precision, and the timeless beauty of American minting. Have you ever held a coin in your hand and felt the weight of history pressed into its surface, a simple nickel that silently tells stories of America's struggle, its innovation, and its promise? The 1968 Jefferson nickel is not just a small piece of metal. It is a witness to a transformative decade in American history, a time of social change, space exploration, and numismatic evolution. This coin carries the marks of craftsmanship, politics, and precision that reflect the heart of the nation. As it entered a new era, welcome to the story of the 1968 Jefferson nickel, a story of transition, innovation, and subtle rarity that continues to fascinate collectors and historians around the world. The 1968 Jefferson nickel emerged in a defining moment for American coinage following the great coinage changes of the 1960s, when silver was removed from most circulating coins, and the U.S. Mint faced a massive demand for coins amid population growth and industrial expansion. The Jefferson nickel had already been a staple in American pockets since 1938, when it replaced the Buffalo nickel. Its design, created by sculptor Felix Schlag, honored the third president of the United States, Thomas Jefferson, whose Monticello home stood as a symbol of intellect, democracy, and architecture. By 1968, the Jefferson nickel had seen its fair share of adjustments. But that year marked one of the most significant transitions in minting history, because it was the year when mint marks returned to United States coinage after a 3-year absence in 1965. The U.S. Mint had removed mint marks from coins in an effort to discourage the hoarding and collecting that was causing a national coin shortage. By 1968, the Mint decided to restore those marks, but in a new location for the Jefferson nickel, the mint mark moved from the right side of Monticello on the reverse to the obverse, just to the right of Jefferson's portrait. This single change gives the 1968 nickel a unique place in the timeline of American coin design. It was not just a technical adjustment, but a reflection of renewed public trust in the coinage system and the Mint's confidence that coins would again flow freely into circulation. The 1968 Jefferson nickels were struck at 3 facilities: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, with the San Francisco Mint producing proof coins. Only each mint had its own story of production challenges and innovations. The Philadelphia Mint struck the largest quantity without any mint mark, following the long tradition of its plain coins, while the Denver Mint, identified by its small d mark, produced circulation strikes that would fill the pockets of millions across the country. The San Francisco Mint, however, focused exclusively on proof coins intended for collectors. Each proof coin was a mirror-like masterpiece, carefully struck with polished dies and specially prepared planchets, creating a level of detail and brilliance unmatched by regular circulation issues. The metal composition of the 1968 Jefferson nickel remained the classic 5-cent alloy of 75% copper and 25% nickel, giving the coin its familiar silvery hue and durability. The coin weighed exactly 5 grams with a diameter of 21.21 millimeters, and a plain edge. These technical details may sound simple, but they reflect decades of refinement. The perfect balance between economy, durability, and aesthetics, designed to keep American coinage, both functional and beautiful. Examining the design, we see the artistry of Felix Schlag still alive after 3 decades, Jefferson's portrait facing left with calm dignity, his eyes gazing toward the word liberty and the national motto, "In God, we trust." The lines of his coat, the soft curls of his hair, and the subtle contour of his face were crafted with remarkable realism on the reverse. Monticello stands as the architectural centerpiece, the word Monticello beneath it, with United States of America and E pluribus unum, completing the patriotic vision by 1968. Minor design changes had smoothed out some details over years of hub design transfers, yet the coin still retained its timeless character. The year 1968 also marked technological advancement at the U.S. Mint as coinage production shifted toward more automated methods and improved die-making processes. The Philadelphia Mint installed new high-speed presses that could strike nickels at incredible rates, ensuring a consistent supply while maintaining quality. This efficiency was essential as America's demand for coinage soared with its rapidly expanding economy and consumer culture. For collectors, the 1968 Jefferson nickel presents a variety of intriguing details. The circulation strikes from Denver are generally common, but can show notable variations in strike sharpness due to heavy die use. High-grade examples with full steps on Monticello. The lines visible on the building steps are especially prized. By numismatists, the full steps designation is one of the highest indicators of strike quality and precision. A 1968 D nickel with fully defined steps can be rare and command premium values at auction. The Philadelphia coins, though plentiful, are less sharp in detail due to older dies used in production. Still, they represent an important part of the year's output. The San Francisco proof coins, however, are where the artistry shines most. The proof nickels of 1968 are renowned for their mirror, Field's frosted devices, and stunning eye appeal. They were struck twice under carefully controlled pressure, ensuring crisp detail. Each proof set sold directly to collectors became a treasured keepsake, reflecting the Mint's dedication to excellence beyond the minting process. The 1968 nickel holds deeper historical significance. The late 1960s were a time of profound change for the United States. The Vietnam War was ongoing. The civil rights movement continued to shape society, and the nation had just witnessed the assassinations of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Senator Robert F. Kennedy. Amidst this turmoil, the everyday nickel represented stability and continuity, an unchanged symbol in a rapidly changing world. When Americans reached into their pockets, they still found Jefferson's calm face a quiet reminder of the nation's enduring ideals. Numismatically, the 1968 nickel bridges the gap between early wartime silver alloy nickels of the 1940s and the modern-clad coinage era that would dominate the following decades. Collectors view it as a transitional issue, a symbol of the Mint's modernization and America's persistence through turbulence over the years. Grading services like PCGs and NGC have authenticated and encapsulated thousands of these coins, with high-grade examples achieving MS66 or MS67 designations, sometimes fetching surprising values among registry-set collectors. The proof coins, especially in cameo or deep cameo finish, continue to draw admiration for their beauty. As the years have passed, the 1968 Jefferson nickel remains a mainstay of American numismatics. It may not be the rarest or most valuable coin in the series, but its story is one of subtle transformation. It marks the rebirth of Mint, marks the rise of proof coin artistry, and the balance between tradition and progress. Every detail on this coin tells a chapter of America's numismatic journey, from design evolution to metallurgical consistency, from production efficiency to cultural endurance. Imagine the journey of one 1968 nickel from the Denver Mint, rolling off the press, bright and new, into bags shipped to banks and businesses, changing hands in grocery stores, gas stations, and diners, each transaction adding tiny marks that tell of everyday American life. Decades later, it may rest in a collector's album, protected and admired, not for its face value, but for the heritage it carries in its metal. And so when we speak of the 1968 Jefferson nickel, we are not merely talking about a 5-cent piece. We are telling the story of American craftsmanship, of a nation's resilience, and of a design that has stood the test of time since 1938. Felix Schlag's vision of Jefferson and Monticello has endured with minor refinements but unwavering purpose. The 1968 issue embodies that continuity linking the past and the future through a simple yet powerful symbol. Imagine holding a small piece of American history right in your hand, a simple 5-cent coin that traveled through decades of change, war, progress, and innovation. The 1970 Jefferson nickel might look ordinary, but beneath its silver-gray surface lies a story of transformation from the depths of America's post-war economy to the heart of numismatic fascination. This coin witnessed the dawn of the modern minting era, a shift in metal composition, and the closing chapters of one of the most respected designs in United States coinage history. Welcome to the world of the 1970 Jefferson nickel, a story that's far more valuable than 5 cents. The story of the 1970 Jefferson nickel begins in an era of social change, political reform, and economic adjustment. America in the late 1960s was a nation recovering from the turbulence of civil rights struggles and the space race while preparing for a new decade filled with innovation and transformation. The Jefferson nickel had already been in production for over 3 decades by the time 1970 arrived, first introduced in 1938 as a tribute to the third president of the United States, Thomas Jefferson, and his iconic Monticello estate, designed by Felix Schlag. The coin's imagery reflected both a sense of national pride and neoclassical beauty, representing Jefferson on the obverse and his beloved Monticello on the reverse. By 1970, the Jefferson nickel had undergone minor design modifications, but its symbolism remained powerful. The coin still bore the familiar bust of Jefferson facing, left his portrait dignified and calm. The words, "In God we trust and liberty," framed his image, alongside the year 1970. The reverse carried the majestic view of Monticello Jefferson's home in Virginia, with the Latin motto E pluribus unum above the dome and the inscriptions Monticello 5 cents and United States of America below. But behind this familiar look, a silent revolution was occurring at the United States Mint. The 1970 production year marked an important phase in the evolution of coinage technology, quality control, and mint distribution practices. The mint facilities at Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco were all actively producing Jefferson nickels that year. Yet each facility's output carried subtle differences that collectors today carefully study. The Philadelphia Mint produced no mint mark on its 1970 Jefferson nickels, as was tradition before 1980, while the Denver Mint proudly stamped its coins with a small d below the right side of Monticello. The San Francisco Mint, however, was a different story, altogether producing proof versions of the coin with the distinctive S mint mark meant exclusively for collectors. The 1970 Jefferson nickel had no significant change in composition. It retained the same copper-nickel alloy that had been in place since 1946, consisting of 75% copper and 25% nickel. This composition was chosen for durability, appearance, and practicality. The wartime silver nickels of 1942 to 1945 were long gone, replaced by this tougher alloy that could handle the wear of modern circulation. But what makes the 1970 issue fascinating to coin historians and numismatists is not its metal but its context. The late 1960s and early 1970s marked a time when coin collecting reached one of its highest peaks in American history. Millions of people were searching their change daily, hunting for rare mint marks, double dies, and errors. The United States Mint responded by improving die preparation and experimenting with new proofing techniques, especially in San Francisco, where proof coins were struck with high-polished dies and extra care. This made the 1970s proof Jefferson nickel a highlight among proof collectors. With its deep cameo contrasts and mirror-like fields, one of the defining characteristics of the 1970 Jefferson nickel lies in its subtle variations, including small differences in die states and minor minting errors that became collectible treasures. Over the years, coin experts have documented repunched mint marks known as RPMs, especially from the Denver Mint, where the D mark was occasionally struck more than once during the minting process. There are also instances of die clashes where the obverse and reverse dies struck each other without a planche between them, leaving ghostly impressions of Jefferson's face, or Monticello faintly visible on the opposite side. These natural mint errors turned otherwise common coins into fascinating study pieces for error specialists. In total, The 1970 production was substantial, with over 515 million Jefferson nickels minted in Denver and more than 370 million in Philadelphia. Meanwhile, the San Francisco Mint struck just over 2 million proof coins for collectors. These figures remind us how widespread the Jefferson nickel was in everyday life. It wasn't just a collectible, it was a working piece of American commerce moving through gas stations, diners, supermarkets, and school vending machines across all 50 states. Yet the historical significance of the 1970 Jefferson nickel goes deeper than circulation. It represents the calm before a major design reevaluation that the United States Mint would undertake in the following decade. As minting technology improved and the bicentennial celebration of 1976 approached, the Mint began considering updates to the Jefferson nickel's design, though these plans didn't come to fruition. Until decades later, the 1970 issue stood as one of the final coins of its era to reflect Schlag's original vision, nearly unchanged. When we explore the proof versions of this coin, we step into the world of mint artistry. Each 1970s proof nickel tells a story of precision craftsmanship. Proof coins were not intended for circulation. They were struck multiple times on specially prepared planchets, resulting in sharp details and a mirrored finish. These coins were sold directly to collectors through the United States Mint's annual proof sets. The 1970s proof set also included the Lincoln cent, Roosevelt dime, Washington quarter, and Kennedy half dollar, together forming one of the most admired proof sets of its decade collectors today. Search for the finest examples of these coins graded by professional services such as PCGS and NGCA. Jefferson nickel, 1970, S-proof. With a perfect deep cameo finish, can command impressive prices, especially in PR69 or PR70 condition. While circulation, strikes from Philadelphia and Denver are abundant, their highest mint state examples, especially those free from contact marks and with full steps on Monticello, are highly prized. The full steps designation refers to the clarity of the steps at the base of Monticello. A detail that reflects the precision of the strike coins with this rare feature demonstrate extraordinary minting quality and can be worth far more than their face value. The Jefferson nickel of 1970 also reflects broader themes of American culture and economy. The 5-cent coin had long symbolized everyday affordability. From buying a soda in the 1950s to paying for a bus fare in the 1970s, this coin connected the lives of millions of Americans. Its design served as a daily reminder of Thomas Jefferson's vision of democracy, education, and independence, a silent tribute to the ideals upon which the nation was built. As we move through the decades, the 1970 Jefferson nickel continues to find its place in both historical study and hobbyist circles. The coin's endurance through time speaks to the strength of its design and the importance of its message. For over 80 years, the Jefferson nickel has survived numerous proposals for redesign's composition, changes, and inflationary pressures. Yet the 1970 edition holds a special charm. It is both vintage and modern, a link between the silver-dominated coinage of the early 20th century and the more industrial metal coinage of the modern age. Whether found shining in an uncirculated roll tucked in a collector's album or resting in the corner of a child's piggy bank, the 1970 Jefferson nickel carries with it the spirit of its time. It reminds us that even the smallest coin can tell a grand story of American innovation, art, and history. This 5-cent piece is a window into the craftsmanship of the mint, the evolution of technology, and the shared experience of a nation where coins aren't just currency, but symbols of identity. Imagine holding a small piece of American history right in your hands, a coin that may look ordinary but carries decades of untold stories, a silent witness to the passing of time. The 1972 Jefferson nickel may seem like just another coin, but what if I told you that this simple 5-cent piece hides secrets that only true collectors and numismatists can appreciate, from subtle design variations to minting mysteries and economic significance? This is not just a nickel. It is a mirror of America in 1972, and today we are diving deep into its legacy, its artistry, and its hidden value. Welcome to the world where history meets metal, where passion meets preservation. Welcome to the deep journey of the 1972 Jefferson nickel. The year 1972 stands as a defining moment in American coinage, a period when the United States Mint was steadily producing billions of coins to meet the needs of a rapidly changing economy. The Jefferson nickel, first introduced in 1938, continued to be one of the longest running coin designs in American history by 1972. It had already witnessed more than 3 decades of production political change and artistic endurance designed by Felix Schlag. The Jefferson nickel was a tribute to Thomas Jefferson III. President of the United States and the visionary author of the Declaration of Independence, the 1972 issue carried that same design, yet subtle changes in die-wear striking quality and minting details made it a fascinating piece for collectors. The obverse of the 1972 Jefferson nickel features the left-facing portrait of Thomas Jefferson with the inscriptions "Liberty" and the date 1972 placed along the right rim, while "In God We Trust" curves gracefully around the left side of Jefferson's face. The image itself had evolved slightly since its introduction. Schlag's design faced multiple minor adjustments over the years, primarily to improve striking consistency and clarity of detail. But by 1972, the mint's machinery had started showing signs of overuse due to high production demands, leading to varying levels of sharpness across coins struck at different facilities. 3 primary mint locations were responsible for producing the 1972 Jefferson nickel: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. The Philadelphia Mint struck coins without any mint mark, while the Denver Mint used a small d, and the San Francisco Mint used an S mint mark. Philadelphia produced an enormous quantity of regular circulation strikes totaling over 370 million pieces. Denver followed with around 268 million, and San Francisco focused mainly on proof issues intended for collectors. The proof coins from San Francisco stood out for their mirror-like fields and frosted details. They were struck multiple times under higher pressure, resulting in beautifully defined features that made the Jefferson portrait almost lifelike under light. When we discuss the historical backdrop of 1972, the United States was navigating through economic tension and political change. Inflation was rising. The Vietnam War continued to cast a shadow over national morale, and yet the mint persisted in maintaining coin production at record levels. The nickel at that time held significant purchasing power compared to today. It was enough to buy a small candy or make up part of the fare for public transportation. Even though the 5-cent piece had long lost its silver content, it remained an important everyday coin for Americans across all classes and communities. Metallurgical composition of the 1972 Jefferson nickel remained unchanged since 1946, consisting of 75% copper and 25% nickel, forming a durable alloy that resisted wear and corrosion. The coin measured 21.2 millimeters in diameter and weighed exactly 5 grams, the same specifications that still define nickels today. This consistency became one of the reasons why Jefferson nickels continued to circulate seamlessly through decades without needing major redesigns or compositional changes. Numismatically speaking, the 1972 Jefferson nickel does not feature rare silver wartime alloys like the 1942 to 1945 series, but it does offer collectors a unique window into die varieties and minting characteristics. One of the most intriguing varieties is the 1972 D/D repunched mint. Mark a subtle doubling of the D visible under magnification. Collectors prize this variety for its rarity and its connection to the manual minting processes of the time when hand-punching mint marks could lead to small yet fascinating differences. Another noteworthy aspect is the presence of strong and weak strikes. Some coins show fully visible steps on Monticello Jefferson's home located on the reverse side, while others show smooth or partially struck steps known as the full steps designation. This grading detail has become a key indicator of quality and value in the Jefferson nickel series. Speaking of the reverse, the design remains one of the most elegant representations of classical American architecture. Monticello stands at the center, framed by the inscriptions E Pluribus Unum at the top, Monticello at the base, and United States of America, along with the denomination 5 cents. The reverse was always a test of minting quality. The number of visible steps at the base of Monticello often determined how well the coin was struck by 1972. Minting technology had improved compared to the early years, but still not enough to produce consistent full-step examples across all coins. That is why a 1972 Jefferson nickel with full steps can fetch a premium today in terms of grading and value. Most 1972 Jefferson nickels found in circulation are worth only their face value, however uncirculated. Examples, particularly those with sharp details and full steps, can reach higher prices. Coins graded MS65 or higher often attract strong collector interest, and if they come with full steps designations, the value multiplies several times over proof. Coins from San Francisco also carry collectible appeal, especially those in pristine condition, with deep cameo contrast between the mirrored fields and frosted designs collectors. Today view the 1972 Jefferson nickel not merely as an old coin, but as a symbol of stability in American currency. The design had already survived multiple decades without drastic change, while other denominations had undergone redesigns or replacements. The nickel remained untouched, embodying the endurance of tradition. Amid modernization, the Jefferson nickel series also connects collectors with America's artistic and historical heritage. Each date and mint mark combination tells a story about its era, from wartime shortages to post-war prosperity, and into the age of industrial expansion in the early 1970s. The production techniques in 1972 were largely mechanical, yet still carried a touch of craftsmanship. The use of steel dies engraved by hand and later by pantograph meant that even the smallest detail in Schlag's design had to be perfectly aligned. This balance between human artistry and machine precision defines why many collectors remain fascinated by mid-century and early 1970s coinage. In modern terms, the 1972 Jefferson nickel may seem common, but when examined under magnification, every detail reveals the mint's effort to maintain quality at an industrial scale. The satin-like luster of uncirculated examples, the crispness of Jefferson's hair curls, and the fine lines of Monticello's architecture all tell a story of precision and pride. As the years went by, millions of these nickels entered circulation, carried in pockets through decades of American life. They witnessed everyday transactions from gas stations to diners to vending. Machines, each coin slowly accumulating wear, yet holding the same image of Jefferson's thoughtful gaze. Collectors often reflect on this endurance, realizing that every worn 1972 nickel once had a journey of its own. Some may have passed through thousands of hands across 50 states before being retired into a collection or lost in time. Beyond its physical form, the 1972 Jefferson nickel represents a continuation of America's economic identity, the stability of its design and composition. Through years of social and political change speaks to the resilience of the U.S. Mint and the American people alike. It stands as a small monument to history, one that bridges generations of coin collectors who understand that value is not only measured in rarity or grade, but in the story a coin tells about the nation that made it. From the bustling mint floors of Philadelphia to the high polished proof chambers of San Francisco, the 1972 Jefferson nickel remains a product of dedication, innovation, and national pride. Its history is not confined to metal, but expands into the narrative of American craftsmanship and endurance. So the next time you come across a 1972 Jefferson nickel, pause for a moment and remember that what you hold is not just a 5-cent coin. It is a fragment of history, a link between the vision of Thomas Jefferson and the enduring spirit of American coinage.